Bellinger, Lazy, Bowers, Clays, Corson, Dietrich, Dahl, Erickson, Fagg, Fauskido, Francisco, Gossage, Haley, Holland, Holscher, Kirshen, Cluse, Longbine, Masterson, McGinn, Olson, O'Shea, Peck, Peterson, Petty,
Here.
Pittman, Pyle, Reddy, Reichman, Schallenberger, Steffen, Straub, Sykes, Thompson, Tyson, Ware, Warren, Wilborn.
Senators and guests, please rise and give prayerful attention to our chaplain.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, in Mark chapter 12, verses 28 through 33, someone considered to be an expert in your law asked the Lord, which commandment is the most important of them all? The answer for then and for now is we only have one God, so love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second most important commandment is this: love your neighbor as you love yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. And Matthew 22:40 adds to the importance of this, saying, all the law and the prophets, all of your Old Testament directives hang on these two commandments. So in the shadow of Dr. MLK's life and legacy, help us to faithfully love you, and in conjunction with that, love one another, not just in word, but in deed. Let the laws that spring from these halls reflect love for our neighbors, even when our neighbors oppose us or we don't like what they stand for. Help us love them like you love us, even when we're unlovely. At the end of our lives, we want to hear you say those Matthew 25:21 words, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Come and join me in glory. Lord, I pray this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming in early. On an agree to disagree, the chair recognizes Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adopt the conference committee report on HB 2284 to agree to disagree and request a new conference committee be appointed.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. As second conferees on part of the Senate, the chair appoints Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson, Senator from Montgomery, Senator Peck, Senator from Douglas, Senator Holland. Before recessing, are there announcements? Senator from Lyon, Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Please note on your desk is a letter from the Secretary of State. He's asked me to distribute to you. Tomorrow is a unique opportunity in that the Secretary of State will have all of the vendors for voting machines will be present in the State House with their machines. So for those of us who have had questions about security or concerns about how election machines work, You'll have an opportunity to visit with not only members of the Secretary of State's office, but the vendors themselves. It will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. tomorrow in the Historical Society Auditorium on the ground floor of the State House.
Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Conference Committee will meet after House adjournment or recess, whichever is first. We will be conferencing on House Bill 2284 and Senate Bill 15.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate, Fed, and State will meet right after we're done here. So head on down to the committee room. We'll get done pretty quickly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Saline, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have at my desk a co-sponsor sign-up sheet for a constitutional amendment regarding the Second Amendment and the protection of firearm accessories, components, and ammunition, as well as applying the standard of strict scrutiny to Second Amendment cases. If you'd like to join that, please see me at my desk. Thank you.
Senator from Sherman, Senator Billinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Ways and Means will meet immediately after recess. Thank you.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Judiciary will meet immediately after adjournment. Thank you.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Falsquito.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the senator from Lyon could tell me if the voting machines, is it only for legislators to look at and see how they work, or if we have constituents in the building, if they are able to look at those as well?
Senator from Lyon, Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Clearly, the snow days have my calendar off. The voting machines are in the building today, not tomorrow. So they've moved that up, or I'm a day behind, one or the other. To the senator from Sedgwick's question, I honestly don't know. I can't imagine them not answering a question or a concern of anybody. So I would certainly, if you have constituents that want to know about it and they're in the building, accompany them down there and let the Secretary of State's office handle it.
For the record, we're all a day behind. That's why we're here at 10:30. Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Commerce will meet immediately upon adjournment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Seeing no further announcement, Majority Leader from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we recess, we will gavel in this afternoon at 2:30, and we have a resolution. After that resolution, we will go to caucus. So we will caucus immediately after the resolution this afternoon at 2:30. So I move the Senate recess until 2:30 p.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate's recessed. I did have a request for point of personal privilege. Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to take a moment and give a shout out and thank you for coming and welcome to the Kansas Senate. I have two constituents here today on the Senate floor with us over here, Mr. David Langford and Mr. Randy Pope, who are constituents of District 11. So welcome to the Capitol and to the Senate, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Messages from the House. Clerk will read.
The House adopts the conference committee report to agree to disagree on House Bill 2284 and has appointed Representatives Smith, A. Burgerkamp, and Sawyer as second conferees on the part of the House. The House announced an appointment of Representatives Smith, A. Burgerkamp, and Sawyer to replace Representatives Sutton, Penn, and Neighbor as conferees on Senate Bill 15.
Introduction of original motions and Senate resolutions. Clerk will read.
Senate Resolution Number 1731 by Senators Erickson and others, a resolution supporting and strengthening of Kansas's trade partnership with Ireland to create a more prosperous future for all.
Chair recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, for the past 4 years, Chairman Mark Daly of the Senate of Ireland has convened an Irish-American delegation, bringing thousands of United States political leaders to the Emerald Isle to strengthen our ties. This past August, I had the honor of representing Kansas along with Representative Christy Williams at this incredible delegation, which served to further develop and strengthen U.S.-Irish trade relations, honor our historical ties, and create a continued understanding between our countries. Establishing a Kansas-Irish Trade Commission is an important ongoing effort with the Senate and House Commerce Committees and the Department of Commerce. Would the reader please read?
Whereas, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 11.3% of Kansas's population is of Irish ancestry, compared to the national average of 9.7%. And whereas, Irish immigrants in the United States helped form the cultural foundation of the nation. And whereas, the ties that bind Ireland and Kansas are deep and lasting. And whereas, thanks to those close ties, both Kansas and Ireland have benefited from deep and extensive cultural and commercial exchanges. And whereas, Ireland currently ranks 38th on Kansas exports, illustrating a need to create a stronger trade partnership. Although the work may be difficult, it surely will be worthwhile. And whereas, it is in the best interest of Kansas and Ireland to support the efforts to strengthen our relationship. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the state of Kansas that we support the strengthening of Kansas's trade partnership with Ireland to create a more prosperous future for all, and be it further resolved that we recognize the Deputy Chairman of the Irish Senate, Mark Daly, for his efforts to promote trade with Kansas and his support of an Irish-Kansas Trade Commission.
Mr. President, we are honored to have today Chairman Daly with us in the chamber. Please join me in welcoming Senator Daly to the Kansas Senate.
Yeah. So I would add my own comments to that. One of the most, I think, effective or impressive interactions I ever had was with Mark, and we went and got to see an interaction between the party leaders in Northern Ireland, and it really what impressed upon me that we can get heated because we disagree over a tax plan, right? These gentlemen. One had been a political prisoner for 15 years, and another one member there was like, you were in prison blowing up my neighbors type of, I mean, this is like, you killed my people. And I thought, wow, we have no concept to the depth of disagreement they have and what they're dealing with. It was so, and Mark described that to us as progress, right? That these guys wouldn't even be in the same room. So it was really impressive, and it also made our problems over here seem really, really small, right, in comparison, because we're arguing over process and different things. But it was one of the most impactful events, so I appreciated the time you invested in that. And thank you for making the trip and joining us here in this chamber. Thank you again. We're ready for the motion. Senator from Sedgwick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move an emergency be declared, the rule suspended, and Senate Resolution 1731 be adopted by voice vote.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Actually, before we go to announcement and recess, we might take a real brief, we just stand at ease for a second so we can thank Mr. Doe. Are you seeking recognition, Senator from Brown?
Yes. Yes. I have a point of personal privilege.
Oh,
please.
Senator from Brown.
There's a bunch of paper on your desk, and when we had to vote on 169 on the veto override last year, I was challenged on the floor, and I sat here quietly and took it. But I think you need to see some of the reasons why I voted that way. And so that's why I put this stuff on the desk. One is an article about rebels in the past. I think that's very interesting read. And you may or may not, whatever you want to do, you can throw them in the trash can, I don't care. But I do think, I put it out there, history of income tax, which I had Eddie Pinner prepare so that we could all see kind of what the history is on that. There's an impact map of what the rate at that time, the 5-1 whatever, would do. So you can look at that. More importantly, there's a list of following the money. So when I followed the money and asked the research to prepare this, where that money would go from that flat tax, this lists the counties and shows the dollars that are going to where they're going. And you all know I'm a rural guy. So anyway, just wanted to let the body know. That's why I voted to sustain. I've gotten a lot more information to back up that, and just ready for this afternoon to go. And I know we're not there yet, but I wanted to put some paper on your desk so that you could kind of get a feel for what I'm thinking. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Apologize, I didn't have you on my list for points. With that, are there any other announcements? Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wanted to announce that there will be a meeting of the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regs this Friday morning, January 19th at 8 a.m. in our usual meeting room on the 5th floor, which right now I can't remember the room number, but 8 a.m. this Friday, January 19th for Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regulations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you. Senator from Miami.
That's right. Senator from Miami.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. President. Just wanted the body to know that next Wednesday, on the 24th, we will be recognizing our Kansas Teachers of the Year. We do have a resolution honoring them, so any of you that would like to be co-sponsors, please get your initials here for me. Thank you so much.
Senator from Lyon, Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee, please note that there was a change in your calendar today. Originally, we were not scheduled to meet tomorrow, but we will be meeting tomorrow to receive an update on the banking industry from the Kansas Bankers Association and the Communities Bankers Association. This is a makeup from the meeting that was canceled last Tuesday and the previous Thursday because the previous Tuesday was a snow day, so we are meeting tomorrow.
Seeing no further announcements, Chair recognizes Majority Leader from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Republicans will caucus immediately upon sound of the gavel in room 548, and I yield to our good senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Democrats will caucus in our usual room, 287 North, upon recess. I yield back to the senator from Cali.
Senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate recess until the sound of the gavel.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Most no. We're in recess.
The Senate will come. On a point of personal privilege, the chairman recognizes the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I would like to take a minute to welcome our guests in the gallery. We're very lucky to have not quite as many Farm Bureau members as we had earlier, but I would like to welcome Farm Bureau. It's a big part of my life. It was my first IT computer job that I had was Farm Bureau, and then I went on to work for NASA, so great. And my husband and I, it's a big part of our lives. So we appreciate all our friends from Farm Bureau, and thank you for being in the Capitol today.
Welcome to the Senate. At this time, I'm appointing the senator from Johnson, Senator Corson, to replace the senator from Douglas, Senator Holland, as Senate conferee on Senate Bill 15. Please note reference of bills on pages 1 and 2 of your calendar. For conference committee reports, I turn to the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson, on House Bill 2284.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move we adopt the conference committee report on HB 2284.
You may explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I know it's unusual for us to see tax policy this early in session, but what's nice about this is it's a review of legislation that we passed last year. Legislation that we passed and lost in a veto, and so we were able to come back and take a closer look at the package and make it even better for Kansas taxpayers. There's several provisions in the legislation. We start with a food sales tax cut, moving that up to April 1st instead of January 2025. We move on to income tax. We have several provisions in there to decrease income taxes for Kansans. One provision is that anybody below $6,150 plus a standard deduction would not pay any state income tax. We increase the standard deduction each year with the cost of inflation multiplier. We increase the personal exemption by $50 for every person that is filed on an income tax return. And we increase that for our veterans again also. It is double what the personal exemption is. So we would take that to $2,300 for individuals and $4,600 for veterans. My apologies, Mr. Vice President. We also included the privilege tax. It was neglected in the Apex bill when the decrease in corporate tax. And we, the other provision is one of probably the most important ones for taxpayers in Kansas. It is true property tax relief. If you remember a couple years ago, we passed legislation that would have increased the 20 mil deduction. It did increase it to $40,000 with a inflation increase included. Last year, we had legislation we had negotiated with the House. It was going to go to $80,000. That legislation was vetoed. So we put in this legislation $100,000 exemption with the annual increase for inflation. With that, I would stand for questions.
Are there questions for the carrier of the conference committee report? The chair recognizes the senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Not so much a question, but a concern. This is being presented as a conference committee report. I appreciate that it has many of the same proposals that the governor has mentioned. I certainly support moving forward the tax on food sales to eliminate that state portion, and glad to see that it is the April 1st. I know many people have been interested in Social Security exemptions. But my concern is there hasn't been an opportunity to again hear from the public on these proposals in part of a hearing on a bill. I know that property tax has been a big concern, and this does increase the residential exemption, but there have been other proposals such as a constitutional amendment to change the percentages, or perhaps, and one that I'm interested in would be restoring the opportunity for individuals who rent to have some kind of a residential homestead exemption, as well as property owners. So without that opportunity to encourage my constituents to appear at a hearing or talk to me about amendments they'd like to see. It just seems that this is being rushed, and we are not, as individual senators, given any opportunity to change the bill as we might see fit. Thank you.
Are there other questions?
May I respond?
Chair recognizes the senator. Yes, Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I would like to respond to that, a couple of comments that were made. We have seen this legislation. We have heard from our constituents. In fact, we have lists of individuals that came and testified on these bills. In fact, many of them, the Senate has heard for 2 and 3, 4 years. So yes, we have heard from our constituent. It is time, it is past time. With $3 to $4 billion in the coffers, it's time to give the money back to Kansans. And the good senator, this homeowner relief, the property tax relief on the 20 mil, the owners of the apartment complex, any residential property qualifies for this. So they are more than able to pass that on to their renters.
Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Holster.
Thank you so much. There are a lot of components here that I really like, but I will say the flat tax is a non-starter. And I greatly appreciate the handouts that we have here that shows who benefits from some of these incentives and some of these tax breaks. And if you take a look at this one in particular, Johnson County is at the top. And I will say District 8, my district, would greatly benefit from the flat tax and the changes there. But my district is not asking for this. My district supports the governor's bipartisan tax plan, and my district wants revenue sustainability, investments in our schools and roads. And frankly, they are tired of regressive experiments that we've seen from the past and want us to continue forward with revenue sustainability. So again, while I appreciate some of the components here, we need to move away from these regressive experiments. Thank you.
Are there other comments? Chair recognizes Senator from Brown, Senator Pyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice President. I have a couple questions first, and then I will have some comments. And if the senator from Lynn would stand for the questions. Mr. Chairman?
She's standing.
Okay. First thing I'd like to know, for each piece that I see that's in this conference committee report, I'd like some clarity. Can you provide me the bill number that each piece came from?
Chair recognizes Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
I'd be glad to. CCR, the income tax portions, almost all of those provisions were in CCR 169 or CCR 8. The food sales tax was in CCR 169. The Social Security, the House did not accept our position last year to remove it all. So we had a buy down, but it was in CCR 169.
Senator from Brown, you may
Property tax relief was in CCR 8.
apologize.
I apologize, it was in CCR 169 also. So, thank you. But all of these provisions were in 169 or 8.
Senator from Brown, Senator Pyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It doesn't answer the question because CCR, I'm asking for a specific bill. So what was the bill number that was introduced last year so that it could be packaged into 169, thereby coming here? So on Social Security exemption, what was the bill number that specifically had that in it? Not a conference committee report, because that's part of my point here. You know, we're throwing things in conference committee reports that haven't been in a bill and hadn't had a hearing on either floor. And that's what I'm asking for. Where is the bill number for each of these? There's several pieces listed here, some of which I haven't seen in a bill. Seen them in reports like we got today, but I haven't seen them in a bill. And I'm asking the chairman, what is the bill number? If she can give me the bill numbers, I'd like to have that.
Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can give you some of them, but what I will do is make a request from legislative research or the revisers, and we'll get that up while we're debating it. All of these bills passed the Senate floor. Not one of them were provisions that came from the House. In fact, the Social Security exemption was Senate Bill 300. All of these provisions have passed the Senate floor. They came out of the tax committee. They were debated on the floor. We had a chance for amendments, and we negotiated with the House our positions. And here we are again for the umpteenth time for the Senate looking at these provisions. So for somebody to stand up and say that they have never seen these before, well, that's a fair statement. Maybe they were in the back room when we were debating them.
Senator from Brown.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to seeing the bill number for the increase to $100,000 on residential property taxes, the elimination of the state sales and compensating use tax on food, ingredients, and the disposition of revenue changes, the privilege tax rate. I just want to see the bill they were in. That's all I'm asking for. And I want to see, not only that, if we're going to get research involved, then I want to see the date it was debated on the floor of the Senate also, not just heard in committee. So it didn't, I want to know when this body saw those bills. So if she can get that done, I'd appreciate seeing that at some point before we have to vote. My second question is, Senate bill, the conference committee report on Senate Bill 169 that we had last year, could you outline the specific differences that are different in this conference committee report from that conference committee report? Please.
Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were a couple of provisions that were different. Off the top of my head, it had an accelerated income tax for corporations that was in the Apex bill. It, like I said, it was a buy down for Social Security. It wasn't exempted 100%. The income tax reductions were quite different than this one. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Senator from Brown.
So, Mr. Chairman, is the privilege tax rate the same in this conference committee report as it was in the previous one?
Senator for Tyson.
The privilege income tax was not the same. As I stated when I was carrying the bill, we negotiated with the House and we came up to a compromise. We increased the privilege tax by $50 for each person. And let me explain the privilege. It's not the privilege tax, I'm sorry. That's the bankers and the trust tax. It's the personal income tax exemption. Yes, the privilege tax was in the legislation from last year.
Senator from Brown, Senator Pyle.
Thank you. I appreciate the chair's comments. I could go deeper, but I won't at this time. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to share a little bit of history. I've been around here quite a while, but I'm going to go farther back first. When I was about yay big, my dad took me and my brother, got a brother that's about 18 months younger than I am, to the St. Joe stockyards. And we didn't have sheep, we had cattle and hogs, but he said it's important for you to come and watch the sheep. And when those sheep were sold in the ring, they would take them to a pen, and then they would systematically, and we had a boardwalk above the yards at that time. It's no longer there. The old commission building's getting pretty run down, and most of it's all gone. But at that time, they would come and get a pen of the sheep, and they would bring a ram, and that ram was trained to take them to the sheep slaughterhouse. And at that time, you had a lot of slaughterhouses built around the stockyards, whether you're in Omaha or wherever, St. Louis, St. Joe, whatever. That was how it was done back then. And anyway, those sheep would go out of that pen, and they would follow that old ram right to that slaughterhouse. And Dad said, be careful who you follow, because don't be a sheep. And a lot of times in this building, it's not just following. I think I've made comment to some of you about how I had a bull last year that weighed about 2,300 pounds when I sold him, but I would take a bucket with a little grain and rattle it, and I could get him to follow me right on to the trailer, okay? And I've got a couple yearling bulls right now that'll follow me on a trailer with a bucket. If I get them in an alleyway and I try to cattle prod them, boy, they're not as friendly, but they want that food and they like it. There's different style leadership. There's those that want to lead you to the slaughterhouse. I watched in 2012 as a lot of new senators came over. And then I watched as a lot of them lost in 2016. And I believe it was so that the leadership could keep their power. That's my personal perspective. But I'm going to go into some other stuff too. I was here in 2001 and 2002. And in 2002, Governor Grace came out. He wanted a tax increase. And he was going to get that through. And he had a Republican legislature, just like we do now, dominated. And they ran, different in this procedure, they ran bill after bill after bill after bill, get the point, after bill across the House floor. I wasn't over here, so I don't know what they did over here. I assume they did similar. We had tax increase bills on fuel, we had cigarettes, we had all of the above. Every one, to count how many votes and how much support was in the chamber in the House for that. Until they finally took all the ones that had enough support and they went to conference with the Senate. But we got to see every one of those single bills, issue by issue, and got to debate them on the House floor. And I've watched as this process has changed over the years to where compromises are made, not on the Senate floor, but in conference committees, where this little piece is pulled out. I've even had, under the Brownback era, I remember a couple people from the Brownback office coming and sitting down and saying, well, if you vote for this, will you at least vote to help us get a bill passed so that we can get it in conference and then we can fix everything? That's a direct quote. I won't say who from, but it was from the Brownback administration. So I didn't like that because I felt like it should have been on the floor and worked out. But you know, it's where we're at today. Also under the Brownback history, and I know they don't want to call this a Brownback plan, but there are amazing similarities to some of the tax issues that are going on here. In 2012, I passed a standard deduction increase, and it was a pretty good increase. It took married filing jointly $6,000 to $9,000, and it passed, and Brownback signed it. But the very next January, when we came back, here I was being told by the vice chair of tax that year, your standard deduction is causing a lot of heartache and is a big problem for the tax plan the governor wants. And so what did they do before we could be realized that law on the taxes? Okay, I'm a farmer, I pay March 1st. So it had to be done soon to get that standard. They took it back to $7,500 at the time. They took it back. It was still an increase over $6,000, but they took it back from $9,000 married, and I won't go into all the other brackets. But anyway, Just a little history I think it's interesting that, and I say that for a reason. Whatever you do today, we all know can be taken back. Doesn't matter whether it's the governor's plan, doesn't matter if it's this plan, it can all be taken back like that. I've seen it happen. I've seen them reverse their policy promises in this building. But I watched Bill Graves. I watched him hold us here for a historic long session to get a tax increase and get the votes to pass it in 2002. I watched as Sam Brownback passed major reform, and I watched as it was taken back. Oh, but I got to insert there, I watched as people voted for a sales tax increase because they got into fiscal trouble with his plan. And so they come in here and they voted for a sales tax. The interesting about sales tax is everybody, it hits everybody. The income tax cuts didn't necessarily help everybody. And it wasn't just a rate of 5.15 or 5.25 single rate. That's not what it was about. It was about getting rid of the top bracket and just leaving the lower two. But the whole rhetoric behind the whole thing, the talk, which the walk did not line up with, march to zero. We're going to get a zero flat tax. That's what it really was, should have been called back then, was we're going to a zero flat tax. I've yet to see anybody run a zero flat tax, but imagine that would be an interesting debate, be a fiscal challenge. But I've watched as these things happen. I came up here to represent the people in my district, and a lot of times I told them exactly where I stood. I told them where I stood on tax issues. Told them, you know, I would work to get rid of Social Security because I think that you've got to eliminate the tax on Social Security to get to the next section of retirement income. It's a step to get there. We all know the CAPERS and KP&F, railroad retirement, you know, all of those are exempt. So here we are trying to exempt Social Security, which I've been an advocate for as long as I can remember. And I really believe that that piece and some of the other pieces that are thrown into this mix are here today because it's a major gotcha vote move. You're going to get somebody because they're going to vote against these things. They're going to turn those into postcard issues, Mr. Chairman. I've seen it so many times up here. It's not about working together across the aisle. It's about you're supposed to follow that sheep to the slaughterhouse pile. You're supposed to do what we tell you. Driven with a cattle prod rather than a bucket of grain. And many in this chamber are operating out of fear. Fear's, you can say what you want about fear, but I know what fear does to people. You can watch the masses. You can watch them when they're afraid and what they do. Governments are afraid of people. Governments are afraid of people when people get hungry. So they create programs and try to make the food price stay down. Hold on, I got to look at my notes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I wish I could get the votes today to suspend the rules, make a motion to suspend the rules, and then divide this conference committee report, and we could vote on it individually, each piece. But that's part of the problem. This is put into a conference committee report for a reason. It's put into a conference committee report so that, number one, you can limit how long old Pyle can talk. I can only speak twice to this conference committee report as individual in this chamber. I can't amend this report. I don't have the freedom and the liberty on this floor to bring an amendment to strike part of it. Can't divide it like I could with an amendment or a bill. It's the right of every senator to divide a bill, but I can't divide this. So I understand the move, the tactics going on here to get what somebody has got to have. Somebody is going to make sure they get this. And I say that because last year, When we had the veto override and it failed, there were several on this floor that said, let's go back to conference, let's take out the flat tax, single rate, and let's come up with a tax plan for the people of Kansas that cuts their taxes now. But you know what? Nope, it's this or nothing. We're leaving. We're going home. That's what we were told by leadership. They shut off the communications, Mr. Chairman. They shut them off because it didn't suit them to go forward with a plan that didn't include their key piece. And I'm here today to tell you, this key piece, when we go back, you don't have the votes. Some point in this session, you're going to come to the realization of that. We're going to have to, if we want tax relief for the people of Kansas, we're going to have to come and look at what the governor is proposing. And it's a good plan. It's an excellent plan. And it can be, some of these things that are in here could be added to that. But the flat tax, the governor has said she will not accept. So, Mr. Chairman, let's leave us at that question is, are we going to continue down a path to where it's two parties, a uniparty system that sits here and says, this is your part of the debate, this is my part of the debate, and maybe that's the uniparty plan, is to leave again with no tax cut. And maybe that's why the flat tax is in this. And maybe that's why the lines have been drawn. And I say these things because anyone that's watching and listening, you need to understand, there's a divide in this country. And if we don't start to wake up and start to realize that we want to make Kansas the greatest it can be, we have got to come up with the ways that help the people and not just those at the top bracket. I handed some things out. I was told that this was available last year. I never saw it. I can understand why, but look at my notes again, Mr. Chairman. Hold on. I'm going to read something that the Lord put on my heart today, if I can find it. For those of you that want to reference and know, Matthew chapter 15, verse 14 says, and this is Christ speaking, let them alone. They are blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a ditch. We fell into a ditch at the last session. There was no tax relief. I passed out the history of income tax for a reason. Income tax was passed as a tax. It was put into the U.S. Constitution, and you can read the years and the dates here, for a reason, to tax the very wealthy people. It has always been about brackets. It is always taxed at different levels. It flies, the history flies in the face of a single rate. If you ask me, this plan today, this single rate, they raised it. That's even worse for the ones that were at 5.2. Now you can exactly say it only helps those that are at 5.7. And I know there are going to be comments, try to cut down. That's okay. Like I said, I know this is a gotcha plan. That's what it is. But I said the blind lead the blind. And pray to God I'm not a blind. I'm not one of those sheep that's following that ram to the slaughterhouse. I don't want to be there. I would rather stand and take the butting and the fighting that goes on with it, standing for what I know works for my family, for the people in my district, and helps those that are struggling right now with all this inflation. And the governor has put together a good plan. Since I can only speak twice, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to look at my notes for a second. I think that about covers my first round. And I would just ask that if you take a look at the article about the rebels, Theirs was about spending, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about tax cuts. And I get it. Everybody, you know, we don't want to cut them too far because under Brownback, I remember the President of the Senate saying we cut taxes too much in 2012. Well, that depends on your point of view. It really does. It does not. And so we're sitting here with a windfall of revenue. We should have given tax cuts not just last year, but the year before when we saw the revenue growing. Should have been done. So we're way behind the 8 ball on the timing. I believe that the best way to help the economy is to give the people their money and let them drive the economy, not government driving the economy. So say what you want. I'm sure that there'll be plenty of comments. I've made some pretty bold statements. I get that. But as I got the numbers last year, we voted on a CCR on this floor. And as I left, I thought, I wonder if I really had the numbers. And so I'm going to jump over. I have a document in here somewhere, Mr. Chairman, that I got right after that vote. It was before, it wasn't after the veto vote, it was before that. But it showed that the 500 and whatever million plan, that 340 million of it was going to the flat tax. And as I broke it down, started seeing who was going to benefit from that plan, I told my wife, I said, I voted wrong. And I said, I can't vote for that again. And so I started pulling more research, which is some of what I passed out earlier today. And I said, this isn't the best thing for our rural areas based on what I saw. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want you to know they're going to get a lot of gotcha votes on me today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Senator for Lynn to opine.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Well, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I will start with that. I don't have any regrets. It was a tax cut last year. It's a tax cut this year. It's great policy for Kansans. We've got so much money in the bank. We need to return it to Kansans, and we can do this quicker in session than we've ever done before. Yes, it needed to be done last year, but we have a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, in IT especially, do not let perfect be the enemy of good. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. Rarely do we see perfect legislation, but we are seeing some great legislation in front of us today. I'm sorry, but my colleagues, you are not sheep. You are not led by anyone. I am proud that my colleagues are individual thinkers and that they look at the policy in their district and they come up with what they need. And that's what we did in debating this tax policy and working it across the floor for the last few years. So thankfully, we've got leaders in this room. We've got leaders who work together to get great policy, and I'm happy for that. Believe me, I've been to the slaughterhouse. You're not sheep. So I would also talk about the 2012 tax policy since that was brought up. I have many facts and data on that. And there were 2 tax cuts in 2012. But what most people do not realize is there were continued tax cuts in 13, 14. Then we had a record tax increase in 15, while we continued to cut income tax in 15. A decrease in 17. How many of you knew this? Built-in tax cuts for all those years in 16, and then it would have continued in 18 if it wouldn't have been repealed in 17. And we faced the largest, I stood and argued against it, did not support the largest tax increases ever in 15 and 17. And here we are today with the result of the economy, with the result of the increase way past necessary. And we have an opportunity to return this money to our Kansas citizens. You say that Kansans won't be helped? There's over 1.3 million Kansans that pay income tax. They absolutely will be helped by this legislation, but not just with income tax policy. By removing sales tax on food, April 1st. By property tax relief, which we know our constituents are clamoring for. We literally have individuals across the state that are trying to decide whether they buy their groceries, pay their heating bills this month, or save for property tax and insurance. We have an opportunity here to return this money. You know, there were statements made that were misleading. I guess if you say it, it's true. Not quite. So let's stick to the facts. Let's stick to accuracy. This is excellent tax policy, and we have seen these provisions before. The single rate was in SB 169. The standard deduction was in SB 33. Social Security was in SB 33. Food sales tax in SB 248. Privilege tax in 300, as I had said, and in also in SB 431 was the property tax exemption for homeowners on the 20 mil. So, Mr. Chairman, this is great policy. It's good for Kansans. Let's get it done.
Chair now recognizes a senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I was here in 2012, and I voted for the Brownback tax cuts. Probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. We could have wrote some really good tax policy that would have helped everybody. Once again, if you guys read the newspapers, a lot of you people experienced it. For certain classes, it was great. I had a business in my district that went in business, car dealership, and lost $1 million. And they got to pay taxes on that loss. I'll tell you right now, I experienced, that was the toughest time in my political career. Because the Ways and Means Chairman, every year we come in, and we were short on money. I mean, we were predicting we were going to have a Powerball winner. That's how we ended. So we balanced. I mean, we come up with all kinds of scenarios. Sell real estate. In 2015, and you guys will experience this somewhere in the future if you keep going down this road. In 2015, I was the guy that voted the deciding vote to increase taxes. Hardest thing I ever did. I told my district I wouldn't do it again, and I didn't. There was a tax increase down the road that I know someone made the deciding vote, and I know that was one of the toughest votes of his career. But I'll tell you, we talk about, for example, we got a great bill that the governor's put forth. This bill's kind of similar in some fashions, exempting Social Security. Senator Pyle has ran that amendment for years, and we couldn't get more than 4 hands in this chamber. Now all of a sudden, we got a flat tax, and everybody wants to exempt Social Security. That's great. They paid taxes on that money. It should be exempt. Should have been exempt 20 years ago. Now, some would blame me because I didn't vote for the bill last year, so they would have that exempt. Because that bill benefited the top tax bracket greatly. You can say it doesn't. It does. Do the math. It's fact. The second piece is the property tax piece. That's a great piece. A lot of people are claiming they wrote it. I know the governor introduced it on Monday in her tax bill. I don't know who wrote it or who's listening in each other's offices or what. I wasn't here this summer because I didn't have any committees, but I think that's great for Kansans. You know, 377,000 Kansans will be removed from paying the state property tax. That's great. The standard deduction increase, I mean, we heard what happened to Senator Powell. What's going to happen when times get tough? Because I remember when we started increasing taxes, you know the first person we hit? Cigarette tax, $2 a pack. You know why? Because we get the money at the, you know, in 30 days, that cash register is going to start rolling in a bunch of money. And then we started hitting the people at the bottom. We didn't go hit the people at the top. People are doing well. But I'm going to tell you, for the last 2 or 3 years, or several years, I've been going and eating lunch up North Topeka and different places. I'll tell you something. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've never seen so many homeless people down by the river. And you think that they're living there because they want to? Inflation has pushed them out of their place to live. Whether owning a house, renting a place, I mean, there's no place to rent. In Johnson County, I was told, this was about 3 years ago, there's 2,000 houses less than 200,000. I bet you there's not 500 houses less than 200,000 today in Johnson County. So where is someone at the very bottom of the pay scale going to live? The apartments are $2,000 a month. Hamburgers have doubled. Everything's doubled. Cars are more expensive than they've ever been. But yet, this tax cut that is before us, heavily slated for the people making $80,000 or more. They're going to receive the bulk of this money. Now, yeah, we're going to exempt Social Security. Seniors are going to get some money. We're going to do the property tax exemption. That's a great exemption. That's going to help a lot. They're going to increase standard deduction a little bit, and that's going to help a little bit. But the bulk of the money is going to this top bracket. And they've even moved it up to 5.25, which is just top bracket now. So nobody in the second bracket is going to receive any property tax reduction in the rate. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the extra money we're spending on this bill versus the governor's bill, we heard last year a senator here talk about, I think it was 85 or 86, when we changed, when we put the constitutional amendment on property tax and passed it and increased, his mother's house went from $100 to $1,000. We've got an opportunity with this surplus to take some of this money, which I've got a bill that I've introduced for the LAVTR, to take some of that money, $50 million, and send it back to the taxpayers in either a refund or a credit. Maybe that's not the plan. I wish our tax committee would dive in, because this state isn't going to keep going. The rural parts of this state are struggling. I mean, if you have a brand new car down there and a house, I mean, you know, you go to Fort Scott, or you go to Waukene, or you go to all these little towns, the property tax rates through the roof. What are we doing for them? Nothing. We're sending more money to Johnson County, Wichita. We're helping the top. We've got a great tax bill that we need to work together on. I'd like to have a bipartisan bill that everybody can vote for. I think that would be great. I also think it'd be great if we could come back here this year and work on a property tax bill that gives real relief on property tax to every Kansan. Instead, we're going to sit here. I mean, who helped with this plan? I guarantee you it's the same people that helped with the Brownback tax cut and a lot of these other tax cuts It's probably the same one that switched the property tax and shifted towards more on residential real estate. And that's all we're doing is just shifting our tax base. We're narrowing it. We're putting it more on the individual. I think we're going the wrong direction. So, Mr. Chairman, I could debate this for hours, but I'm going to make a motion to send this conference committee back to conference. Mr. Chairman, that's my motion.
You've heard the motion. The motion is in order. The senator from Johnson now is a carrier, and you may make your motion.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to, we're in the second week of session. We've got time left. I think it's time we work together as a body. I know people in here, there's several people, this isn't the bill they're wanting. They're afraid to lose what I've lost. But I'm all right with that because I'm happy. I believe I'm fighting for the people in my district, not the people in the hall, not the people in Wichita, not the people across the street. I'm fighting for them. And I think it would be better for us to work together, come out with a bill, put it on this floor, let us debate it, let the whole world see it, and take our time and move forward for real tax policy for Kansans. Let's don't fear of losing a committee chair or a favorite parking spot or our office. Let's debate it. Let's come in here as senators, duly elected, each have the same power. And let's amend this bill and find the best solution for Kansans in every aspect of this state. And we need real property tax relief. If we don't get the property tax, what's going to happen to rural Kansas? They keep declining. That's just a property tax every year on rural Kansas. So this is why I'm sending it back. We need more transparency, more time in the process, and we need to debate the issue on this floor. That's what the people back home expect of us. They don't expect that we come up here and in a few days we change some numbers and add stuff and decline, whether it was all in there or not. They expect us to debate it on this floor so their voice is heard, because each one of us is a voice of them. My voice hasn't been heard in this tax bill anyway, but the one on Monday, it was. That's the reason why I was working with the governor, because I've been here 20 years and I've had very little input in tax policy. And I bet you there's others like that. And then we know how to play the conference committee. Trust me, I know how to play these games better than anybody. But I'm telling you, the people want us to debate it right here in view of what they can see. And they want us to do what's right for them, not what's right for some big special interest or some big donor or anything else. They want everyday Kansans, they want property tax relief. That's their number one issue. Then income tax. There's great pieces in here. We need to strip that flat tax out and start over. So I move my amendment.
Are there questions from the carrier of the amendment? Chair recognizes the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The carrier of the amendments made a couple comments I would like him to clarify. First off, he said that nobody in the second bracket would receive property tax relief. Would he please explain that comment?
Chairman, Senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Yeah, I don't think I said anybody, the second bracket wouldn't receive property tax relief. everybody that owns property is going to receive property tax relief up to 100,000, the state property tax value. People in the second bracket will not see a lot of income tax relief.
The chair recognizes the senator from Lynn. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'd like to clarify that because they will see income tax relief. It just won't be instantaneously. So we increase the standard deduction each year. There's a multiplier based on inflation, and we increase the personal exemption each year. So that is true property tax relief. In fact, the personal exemption's better than the standard deduction because only about 70-some% see that increase. So the standard deduction income tax filers will not only get the standard deduction increase, they'll get the personal exemption increase, and it helps all Kansans. We're lowering food sales tax almost immediately. Another comment was made that this doesn't help people in all income tax brackets. Well, I just demonstrated how that is not accurate. It does. And it's interesting, the senator from Johnson argued for the bill, in fact, voted for 169 3 times before he voted against a veto. So I'm curious as to what policy changed to take him from a supporter of the legislation to an opponent of the legislation. Especially, the policy is even better than it was last year. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Mr. Vice President, definitely looked at the bill more thoroughly, had many conversations with people in my district, talked to my family after looking at the bill. I just remember all the campaigns and all the negativity towards the Brownback tax cuts and then the tax increase we made in 2015. I had to answer for them questions. And I told myself I wouldn't do it again, and I almost caught myself doing it again. I'm proud of the vote I made last year. I'd make it again in a heartbeat. I regret I didn't make it sooner. Fact is, I didn't come up here to be friends with anybody. I come up here to represent my district, and I know some of you might be upset with me, people in the halls. I know they don't call me like they used to. I'm fine with that. I didn't come up here to represent them people. I come up here to represent the people I'm representing. And what I see in this bill today is no different. I'm explicitly talking about the tax rate side of the bill. Does nothing for the people in the middle and the bottom. It's heavily slated for the people at the very top, 90,000, 80, 90,000 and more, and that tax rate just goes up. You know, if you make $5 million, you're going to have a pretty good tax cut as that rate climbs. I can't justify that, especially since we've only got so much money we can give back and then we will be out. And I guarantee you, the people all across this great state, in my district, in Johnson County, and in rural districts across the state, property tax is the biggest issue. We did the state portion. We need to step up and either fund the LAVTR, or we need to come up with a plan to get money back to these people on property tax. We're pushing seniors out of their houses. That helps at the state, but what about the county portion they're paying? I mean, we're just going to do nothing for them. We're going to give all this money to the people at the top, but we do a little bit on the state portion, but the rest of it we're not. And so, I mean, I know she's going to make hay out of what I say, but that's my reason, and I stand on my motion. I'm convicted to I like the bill that the governor put forth. She involved me, and I appreciate that. And she involved others. And I think it's a great bill. And I think with that bill, we can work on some property tax reform that will help Kansans stay in their house, help them ease the burden of these tough times, and look for ways of helping people in housing. We're struggling right now because of the inflation. So many people are becoming homeless or have multiple families living together to just be able to attain housing. So,
Chair now recognizes the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I appreciate the senator from Johnson. I know he used to live down in my neck of the woods where I'm at now, and not far from it. We don't make hay. I cut hay and I bale hay, and I feed it to the cows. But I will address some of the statements. The, on the income tax portion, the lower income is helped the most on this. If you look at the effective tax rate, they're going from a 1.3% to 0 state income tax. That is a big benefit for the lower income. Yes, it does help the higher bracket. The 575 brings a portion of, it brings their taxes down to 525, but they're paying the largest portion. It's like the food sales tax. That helps all families. And we argue it, especially low income. Well, if you look at the dollar amount savings, it's for the higher income families because they're buying the steaks and the shrimp while most of us are buying the ground beef. So you can argue the numbers any way you want. The reality is, and the fact is, this helps all Kansans. It lowers taxes, sales tax, property tax, and income tax for Kansans. It's good policy. I hope that you reject this motion and let's continue the debate. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Seeing no other questions, the senators from Johnson, Senator Olson's motion is to send this back to conference. All in favor of that motion say 5 hands. We'll have a roll call. Clerk will call the roll. To be clear, the motion is to not adopt the conference committee report on House Bill 2284 and that a new conference committee report be appointed. Clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgardner. Billinger. Lazy. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fag. Faust-Goudot. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Reddy. Reichman, Schallenberger, Steffen, Straub, Sykes, Thompson, Tyson, Ware, Warren, Wilborn.
Has every senator had an opportunity to vote? Does any senator wish to explain their vote? Does any senator wish to change their vote? Seeing none, we'll close the roll. Tally the vote. On a vote of 24-11, the motion fails. We're now back on the conference committee. I now turn to the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson. Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Standing for questions.
Chair recognizes Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I rise, Mr. Vice President, because I've sat here for several years, and it concerns me that we let some of the rhetoric and the accusations go by because maybe we're looking at the clock and we want to get out of here. But I think it's incumbent upon us to address when there are baseless accusations, when character is impugned, when intellect is insulted, when my motives in how I represent my district are questioned and called names. I feel compelled to address that. And especially when Scripture is invoked, because we heard Matthew 15. I'd like to go back a few chapters before that. Matthew 7:5 says, "You hypocrite, first remove the log out of your own eye so you can see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's." So, Mr. Chair, I do have a question for the carrier. I would like to know if she'll stand for questions.
Chairman from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
My question is, I keep hearing of this so-called governor's tax plan. And I would like to know, is there anything that the governor is proposing that hasn't been a Republican-led policy that has been in a tax committee, debated on this floor, any innovative, any unique aspect to the so-called governor's plan that hasn't been put forth by Republicans?
Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question. What's interesting is we don't have a governor's tax plan. We keep hearing reference to the governor's tax plan. All we had was a press conference and a statement. And I can go off that press conference and statement and tell you the differences that are in the policy. And there's a couple of items in there that have not crossed the Senate floor or have not been debated and do bring up policy issues and take us out of compliance with certain organizations, which I know is a consideration for this body. In fact, I know so much. We've tried to remove sales tax on manufacturers' coupons for years, and we were not able to work on that legislation until we had it changed in the streamlined sales tax. We have it changed, so we will be seeing that policy this year. But the governor had proposed a couple of items. One was the back-to-school sales tax holiday on school supplies. That legislation was brought to me when I was a freshman in the House from the good senator from Montgomery. It was his idea. I give full credit. I introduced the bill, we worked it, we tried to get it out, we weren't able to. That policy's been brought up again. We're talking about it again. She also recommends the child tax credit. That legislation was introduced in the Senate. I think it was the good senator from Sedgwick and/or the good senator from Shawnee that worked on that legislation. The other one is the sales tax exemption on hygiene products. Again, hasn't been worked. We're not sure. It takes us out of compliance. We're doing the research on that. It's not that we're ignoring it. It's that we're doing our homework and our due diligence. And I would like to inform the body. You know, my father-in-law tells me that I'm able to get so much done because I don't care who gets credit. And I actually give credit where credit is due. The Social Security exemption from state income tax was introduced, the earliest I know, was by Senator Peggy Palmer. It's been around for years. We've been discussing it for years. Yes, I did pick the banner up and run with it. I think it's great policy, and we've been trying to get it passed in the Senate. And I'm so glad for my colleagues for that. The food sales tax. Representative Jana Goodman from Leavenworth, when I was a freshman, introduced that policy. We actually got it passed in 2012 across the House floor, but we lost it in negotiations. Representative Sean Tarwater brought us the idea of increasing the property tax exemption on the 20 mil. That had not been changed since the inception of that policy in 1997. He brought it to me. We introduced the bill at $100K. We negotiated, as I said, and we ended up at $40K with the annual increase. Here we are again at $100K with the annual increase. That's great. We did our due diligence. We did our homework. The money's in the bank. Let's give it back to taxpayers. All of this policy we've seen before. The standard deduction, the simplified income tax code. Coincidentally, I introduced a bill in 2017 doing a similar thing, a much lower tax rate, while Representative Adam Lusker across the aisle was introducing a similar bill at a different rate, but the same idea. We didn't know, we hadn't talked to each other, but it was good policy. So I don't care where the good idea comes from. In fact, I had a phone call from the ranking years ago. He asked me to help with property tax for seniors. I said, will you add disabled veterans to that? He said, absolutely. And we went forward. And the tax committee, this body, passed legislation to help seniors and disabled veterans stay in their home. We tried to expand that last year, and the governor vetoed it. But it was working together. It was bipartisan. It was across the aisle. And anybody that says I don't work with Democrats, you haven't been to my family reunions lately. We work for good policy. We work for Kansans.
Chair now recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few comments on some of the things that have been said and to lend my full support for this. First of all, when Senate Bill 169 passed, a lot of people were excited last year when we were unable to override the veto. I was flooded with people who were very disappointed. So we've heard from our taxpayers, and we are supporting them, and we are doing this in response to that. What's interesting, though, in a lot of the comments is what appears to be a class warfare argument. If you look at, and let me put this in the context of my own personal experience. When I got married, I had $45 in the bank, okay? And I worked, and I achieved, and I was able to increase my income. So I've been at the low end of the scale. I've been at the high end of the scale. With these graduated tax rates, you punish achievement. You punish young families who are trying to, build their nest egg, trying to build their retirement accounts, trying to buy a new home. The beauty of this single rate, this simple rate, is that they are not punished as they increase. They get raises. They're paying the same tax rate. They're not jumping into the next marginal tax rate, into the next tax rate that takes more and more. At one point, I was paying enough in taxes to pay 3 Senate salaries right here, okay? If I had that money back, I could have funded my own retirement account. I would not have to take Social Security. Just think of what we're doing with this. These benefits start at this single rate and go up from there because we're indexing those tax benefits to people. And then if you start talking about the people who make the most money, the top 10% pay over 50% of the taxes. What happens? We're talking 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 in income. These are small business owners who are going to hire people, who are going to bring people up. So are we wanting to punish them by keeping these higher tax rates in place? No, because they pay a very large portion of their income in taxes. Giving them a break benefits society, benefits jobs, benefits young people who need a leg up. There are so many things. Inflation, we talk about inflation. Inflation always is a function of government. It's a function of money policy. Government gets a windfall whenever we have inflation because sales taxes go up. But those folks who are sitting there, they're having to pay these increases and they're not getting anything for it. We need to give this money back. By giving the money back, putting more money back into their pockets, they get to make the economic decisions that will benefit this state. That's how it happens. We can't sit here and figure out what they're going to do with that money, but I guarantee you they're going to put it back into action in the economy through purchasing, through hiring. It's going to have nothing but a benefit to everyone in this state of Kansas. And I don't care if it's a little bit of money we give or a big chunk of money. The fact of the matter is we're $34 trillion in debt in this country. We're projected to be $50 trillion in debt in the next 6 years. So I'll guarantee you the CPI is not going to go down. It's going to go up. It's time we help Kansans do with their own money what they want to do with it, and that's why I fully support this. Thank you, Mr.
Chair now recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Masterson. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we'll go with Butler. Still there. But glass houses and stones, I said the senator from Miami was from Johnson, so I can't complain. I'm not going to poke at anybody because I know where everybody kind of is. And I'm going to try to step back from some of you. I can be sharp at times, and I apologize for that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the plan, a couple things I heard, and then about the plan itself. I think the only thing I agreed with from the opposition is that we should have had tax relief last year. I agree with that. And I heard at the press conference last Monday that, we tried, but it was blocked. Yeah, it was blocked by a veto. Right? That's what blocked it. We'd have that right now. And then we were blocked again because we couldn't override a veto by one vote. I would point out we had one vote short of a super majority for that tax relief last year, but it didn't happen. So here we are. So a couple other comments. I think another comment I heard was history flies in the face of a single rate. That's just patently false. Because look at Utah. Utah's had a single rate for like 25 years, right? They've been in the last 15 years #1 state in growth per capita. They don't have a beach, right? Right? They're landlocked. They're about, a little over 3 million people. But they've been performing well. And I think the same senator might have pointed out, you can call zero a single rate. Look at what those states are doing. Texas, Florida, Tennessee, right? I'd say the opposite is actually true, that history is in favor of that simpler form of tax. This is a gotcha vote. Well, no, it's not. I mean, and we don't need anything new. Those votes were cast last year as well. This is not a new gotcha vote. Y'all voted low last year. So this isn't trying to pinch anybody. There's nothing new here. We're not trying to get anybody. Process. I was trying to think back. What did we do on this? I remember this chamber, we passed a 4.75 and 0 exemption bill last year. House passed 525. It was debated, amended, processed. Food sales tax. This chamber voted to actually axe the sales tax on food completely. Right? Compromise. Leaving it on the locals can have it, fine. Right? We're coming, there's compromise there. There's compromise on the other plan. I remember debate on Social Security and retirement that ended in discussion and debate and removed the income tax on all retirement. Compromise, taking it off Social Security, which I agree with in principle and always have. Another step of compromise. We also debated the property tax exemption. If I remember right, it was somewhere around 45,000. Now we're talking about 100. Compromise. We even include an escalator. So kind of get down to the truth of the plan. This is where I'd like to end. I think someone said, well, I'm glad we got to see who it'll benefit. Me too, because you know who it benefits? Everybody. Everybody. So we have to go to some kind of mental machination to try to discourage that. And at the bottom, 100% tax cut on that first $6,150. That's the bottom, 100% tax cut, exempt, 0. 100% tax cut on Social Security, 0. By the way, I might point out, for those that make this statement that one provision of this plan benefits the wealthy or only benefits the wealthy, we currently have an exemption on Social Security, $75,000. You want to point to a provision in this bill that truly does really just benefit the wealthy as it's defined? It's Social Security. But we're pushing it. And I agree with it in principle. I believe we should be taxing Social Security. We're one of 4 states that do it. We shouldn't be doing it, but it's certainly disingenuous to say that about that provision and not the other, because you completely miss that exemption, right, on the lowest income. Here's how that percentage game plays, right? When you have a single rate, like sales tax, for example. If I spend $100 on groceries, and because of this cut, I save $5. But Larry here, because he's got the resources, he spent $200 on groceries and saved $10. He saved twice as much as me. Is that unfair? 100% more benefit, right? I mean, it's double the benefit that I had. That's how disingenuous that is. To every tax cut you make, if you're talking about dollar value, the rich always get more because they buy more food, they own more property, they make more money. But we're saying because we want to have this warfare, we shouldn't give benefit to anybody. All those arguments do, it promotes discontent, class warfare. Yours is bigger than mine. It's unhealthy. This plan does benefit the bottom the most, unless you pull that gamesmanship on dollar value, and then your own plan does it the worst, right? It's just, the compromise is here. Every bit of this thing is a compromise on the governor. The only one not compromising is the second floor. Let's get to the business of compromise. This is completely sustainable. It shows out. We've got billions of dollars and a rainy day fund, and it pencils out. There's absolutely no reason not to return these resources to the people we serve. And for the record, I've seen polling that even in the districts of a few that are against that, they were for last year's plan, which even had a bigger fiscal note. So I would question whether or not we're actually supporting our colleagues. With that, Mr. Chairman, I support this plan and I hope you all do too.
Seeing no other questions, I'll turn to the chair, Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Well, that was eloquent and accurate and much appreciated. We do need to work together, and it doesn't need to be all or nothing. It doesn't need to be my way or the highway. We mentioned the word compromise. That's exactly what this plan does, and it's great policy. Keep in mind when you vote for this policy, or vote against it if you decide. This helps all senior citizens. It lowers income tax for them. It helps them on their food. It helps them with their property taxes, which we've heard more than anything. This helps young families starting out, especially those that are struggling with lower income. This helps homeowners, all homeowners, with property tax relief. It helps the mom going to the grocery store to buy groceries with sales tax relief on food starting in April. It helps Pat and Garrett out in Norton, who have an extremely high increase in their heating bill this month. It helps John, who literally runs his household at 55 degrees in order to save money. It helps Pam from Tipton by removing state income tax on her Social Security and allowing her some property tax relief after she's seen massive valuation increases. It allows her to stay in her home. It allows Barb from Topeka to save on her income tax, property tax, and sales tax on groceries. We all know where we're going to be on the legislation. As you cast your vote, please think of your constituents. Think of the ones that you heard from this summer and over the fall. They are clamoring for tax relief. And Mr. Vice Chairman, the good senator from Johnson, him and I both know that making hay is a common term. And I appreciate his efforts on tax policy. I really do. And I appreciate all of you taking a look at this. With that, Mr. Vice President, I'll ask the body to stand in support and vote yes on this legislation. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll hold for final action. We are now ready for final action. On this roll call, we will take the following. The Conference Committee report on House Bill 2284. The clerk will read the title.
House Bill number 2284, an act concerning insurance.
The clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgardner. Billinger. Lazy. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fag. Faust Goudot. Francisco, Gossage, Haley, Holland, Holscher, Kirshen, Cluse, Longbine, Masterson, McGinn, Olson, O'Shea, Peck, Peterson, Petty, Pittman, Pyle, Reddy, Reichman, Schallenberger, Steffen, Straub, Sykes, Thompson, Tyson, Ware, Warren, Wilborn.
Has every senator had the opportunity to vote? Senator from Sedgwick, Senator McGinn. Does any senator wish to explain their vote? Senator from Butler, Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding the senator from Ford has pulled into the parking garage, and so please continue with explanation changes, but I would ask to allow him the time to get up the stairs and cast his vote.
Thank you. We will stand at ease mid-term, mid-roll call. Is there anyone that wishes to explain their vote? Vote. Senator, we'll call you in just a moment. Senator from Meade, Senator Reichman.
Aye.
Does any senator wish to change their vote? Does any senator wish to explain their vote? The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote.
Loves Pittman? Oh, man. Are you ready for confirmation tomorrow? It could be a wild ride.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
So John asked Renee today, he said, why are you trying to win votes against me? And she said, I'm not. Oh, no.
25 voting in favor and 11 against. The CCR for House Bill 2284, having received the required constitutional majority, is hereby declared passed. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill number 351, by Committee on Education, an act establishing requirements for school safety and security plans and cardiac emergency response plans. Senate Bill number 352, by Committee on Public Health and Welfare, an act concerning health and healthcare. Senate Bill number 353, by Committee on Public Health and Welfare, an act concerning gender identity medical care. Senate Bill number 354, by Committee on Public Health and Welfare, an act concerning insurance. Senate Bill number 355, by Committee on Ways and Means, an act concerning health and healthcare. Senate Bill number 356, by Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning insurance. Senate Bill number 357, by Committee on Transportation, an act concerning roads and highways.
This constitutes introduction of Senate Bill 351 through Senate Bill 357. Are there announcements? Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just want to clarify on the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regulations, our committee meeting room is room 159 South for January 19th at 8 a.m. January 19th, 8 a.m., 159 South. Thank you.
Are there other announcements? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the Senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate adjourn until 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 18th, 2024.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Senate is adjourned.